Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Change Itself. And we're coming at you with a lot of great content, and hopefully you enjoy it as well. And looking forward to your feedback. So if you're new to the episode, you can follow our show through changeitself.com or through the Facebook page, the LinkedIn page, all these social media platforms. The LinkedIn page, Change Itself. And Eric, here we are again for our first recording of the year, I believe, right?
Yeah, exciting. Time to get back into it. Feels like it's been a long time. Heard some pretty exciting news on your end. Something about Forbes.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride. It's been a good start to the year. So we magically made a list somehow through some of the work that Forbes has been doing as far as evaluating startup companies across Canada. So they were able to curate the top 200 companies in Canada from their perspective based on the criteria. And we finished number 18 on that list. And when you filter it down to the technology sector, we're number four. So not too shabby. And it was
Congrats.
a nice surprise. Yeah, thanks, Eric.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah. So just to get our audience up to speed here, Eric and I had decided a while back that, or just before the holidays, that we were going to change the format of our episodes a little bit for this year to bring more content that people have been asking for. So we've been getting a lot of great feedback from you, the viewers, and people in just in general. We're going to different shows or different events, and we're striking some really good conversations. So, based on our experiences that we've had so far, implementing change, rolling out new strategies, trying out new software, or even just tweaking current software, whatever that looks like, we thought, we're going to share a lot of those different elements with you through the year, and looking forward to your feedback. So Eric, I think one of the first things that we wanted to talk about was stakeholder engagement, right? And as we see through the value chain of putting any kind of change in an organization.
Yeah, um, fully agree. I think it's a great topic. So, like, what do we mean by that? And I really think it's identifying who the different stakeholders are that are going to be affected by the change. I think that's really the first part of it, because when prepping for the episode a little bit, talking about it, was kind of interesting as to what we meant and where to go. And for me, one thing that I always keep in mind and I keep checking myself in is, what is the value for the end user? And I'll use an example. From creating a form, or I'm asked to create a form, I ask that person, what is the end user? What is the value to that end user? Like, what's the benefit to them? Because if it's not of benefit to them, it's going to add time, add, frustration. They're likely not going to want to do it. They're not going to see the value in it for themselves, and you're not going to get great data, great information. So I'm always focused on what is the value for that person, that end person that's actually using the document or actually using the form. If it's got if it adds value, makes their day better, then there's much better chance of success for that change to be implemented.
Absolutely, absolutely. And at the same time, I mean, it's critical. So I actually went through this exercise recently, Eric, with one of our clients, and it's all with great intention, right? So the one thing that I want to bring to the conversation here too is that it's not that we did it on purpose, and it's not because these initiatives that may have fallen apart for you uh, was because of a lack of diving in deeper or whatnot. But it's just sometimes in the world that you live, you don't consider other moving parts. And we went through that exercise where, like at the management level, there was some very, very clear initiatives that needed to be put in place. And we were looking for very, very specific information coming back from the end users to facilitate the new future that we're trying to create, right? And then through workshops and through everything else and through considerations, like we had brought in probably six or seven different levels of stakeholders to the conversation to build the solutions, except for except for the actual person that's going to be submitting this information, like the actual person that we're going to be asking to deliver this result, right? So everything was all thought out. We workflowed the whole thing. We planned the whole value chain of information. We we kind of thought we had everything covered. We even had the supervisors that were going to be delegating this work in the table at the table, and everything was all perfect. And we said, okay, before we go any further, really, we've already invested 6 or 7 hours of support into building this new way of being. Let's just do a dry run. Let's just do a dry run with the person that's actually going to be filling this out or submitting this information or following through with this workflow, just to see if it's going to be all right. And it took all of 3 minutes and everything fell apart. everything fell apart. They're like, one, I understand exactly what you want to go with this, but you're trying to solve the wrong problem. The problem is actually not this information that you're missing, it's this information that you're missing. And this was a symptom of it, right? So pretty valuable insights that came within minutes from the direct stakeholder that we were trying to support. Like, we were trying to support this person or this group of people to drive better, a different result than previous, and then totally missed the opportunity to bring it to the table early in the conversation, right? That must resonate quite a bit with you too.
Yeah, I mean the thoughts are there. They're in many different aspects, and I'm reflecting now as to times where that went really well and times where that didn't go so well. And I would say the times where that went well are times where I've actually made it a point to think about that change and made it a point to do that. And it certainly wasn't. It's something that I've learned through trial and error, specifically in my role as manager of health and safety around the implementation of Sofvie and Technica. A lot of times, I would run out and introduce something from it was bringing benefit to me or bring benefit to the supervisor, but I didn't consider the worker. I didn't consider the person that was actually having to do that. And then I get all kinds of pushback, and it really didn't go so well. Just trial and error, kind of figuring it out, because it's not always perfect, but it's going to the field and going to ask the person how they feel about that or what they would do. And I'm really learning the, little tricks around communicating it ahead of time so that it didn't land as such a big deal when it was there and there was value for the person. And then there's been support along the way. And there are times where, it's change. And so when I plan for it in a certain perspective, but if I'm taking on a new role with a new team and I forget to go have that conversation and set the context and to demonstrate the value that a solution that I'm proposing brings, then I can expect that I might get some pushback, or it might not get done right away, or there'll be a lot more resistance to that change and to what we're asking. Ultimately, the intent is great. You touched on it earlier. Everybody's intent is good. People aren't doing it to be nefarious. They're doing it because they want to help, the project, the business, the change, whatever it is. People genuinely want to help, but how it lands for that other person isn't always necessarily the way that it's intended. And that definitely hurts getting an initiative across. Sometimes it'll completely flat out stop it.
Yeah. And in the opposite perspective, sometimes we get so acute to that requirement of involving the end user or the person that's actually going to do the work that then we focused only on that, right? And then everything was perfect with the person that was going to do it. They were online. They were ready to go ahead with this. And then all of a sudden we present, hey, this is what this is what we're going to get from the field. This is what we're going to do. And we present it back up to, either the supervisor or above, right? And then it falls apart there. And you're like, well, what do you mean you're going to get these people? What do you mean this is how we're going to get it from like and that's a different perspective, because it's all about challenging the comfort zone that they're in, right? So whether you're bringing a change to the person that's going to have to give you that work, or you're applying a change to the people that have to absorb the results of that work, you're disrupting the ecosystem in a certain context as to what they've been very, very comfortable and used to doing on a regular basis. And sometimes even though you've got the end user buy-in, the whole project stalls or stops because the receiver of that change downstream needs to have that process refined, right?
Yeah, there's an impact on the various stakeholders wherever they are. And you touched on, you mentioned the word like the value chain kind of change earlier, and it's got to be win-win-win for everybody, because if it's not, if there's, if it's a loss anywhere along the way, or it's a win for one person and a lot of work for the other, it can almost guarantee that your initiative is going to falter and stall, and require a lot more time, effort, energy, and money to achieve.
Oh yeah, it's the typical thing, right? Where sometimes you make somebody very, very happy because you've streamlined their entire process, and it's not because you've actually streamlined it, is that you just took the baggage of work and just put it on somebody else's desk, so to
That's
speak,
pretty
right?
good,
So
no?
so they're happy.
Yeah. If I'm
So what would
receiving
you
that, I don't know.
yeah, so what would you say, Eric, like as far as like if we had to amass some of our best practices that we've created over the past couple of years on how this takes place, like where did you see some of the low-hanging fruit that just by implementing a simple thing? Like the other day we talked about the simple email communication ahead of time changed everything on how things happen. Like if we had to give our audience some little tidbits on what went really well, what does that look like?
Um, I mean, there's lots. If I start with an initiative in particular, like a change initiative where we're asking for an improvement or something to be done in the field, and maybe I can use it like a quality improvement on a pre-task or a pre-op for an individual. I can tell them what the expectation is, and that's one thing. Now, whether that happens or not, if I don't do anything and I'm not there to support it, and I'm not there to go support the initiative sometimes in the field, it's not very useful. It doesn't get done. Sometimes it will get done if they see value in it for themselves. And sometimes it's just like, oh, it's more work. It'll take more time. I don't, once they start to show you. So another piece would be to show them the value that they're creating, highlight the value, keep, pumping it up, because ultimately, information and data is what you need to make good decisions and to make, save your time and make improvements. So that's gold. That's one thing. I think another big one is really to call the stakeholders in before you go implement it. So oftentimes something that will happen is there's a release coming from Sofvie, and I'm aware of the different updates and changes and improvements coming, or maybe it's a new module. It doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to turn the tap on and just let it go. We're going to plan that out, and we'll have an idea of how we want to do it. And it'll be a matter of bringing in the people that are going to be involved all the way along that value chain of change, and sit down. And we personally like to do a risk assessment. What are the pros? What are the cons? What do we need to be worried about? And then how do we see that working? And when that whole team is engaged in the process of planning out the initiative and involved and is, bought into that, it makes it so much smoother. And then on the back end of that is following that up with a lessons learned, or a check-in to see how things are going, or highlighting the really good work that people are doing and the value that it's bringing. Those have been keys to, really good stakeholder engagement, and really, enabling that people want to do these things. They want to be involved. It's not a chore. It's something that people are really, really looking forward to taking part in. I don't know if you've seen that elsewhere, Gus.
Yeah, and I think that the most important part about what you brought up there is that you get to scale yourself as a process, right? So by having 4, 5, 10 people, 20 people involved in the actual plan out, like the planning process, or the creative process, if you will, of how you're going to execute this. Well, now you've got 20 people that are aligned and 20 people that are going to spread the good word instead of you trying to do it by yourself, right? It gets to be an ordinary task sometimes, and a low what do you call that? Like just one of those things that, kind of drags you down because people don't see all of the effort that goes on in the back end. And
Yeah.
actually just went through that internally as well at Sofvie. Like we've just transformed our management systems from one system to the next, our documentation system from one to the next, our code management system from one to the next. And even though we're all in the space, um, because the initial systems were installed by me primarily, and then we kind of dictated the way that we're going to do business. And as we onboarded personnel, like that was just the way it became, and then we all got comfortable to do that way. Well, now to change it, I said, you know what? Let's build some small teams. You guys are gonna come up with a way that we're gonna move from this system to that system. You guys are gonna come together on how we're gonna move that system to that system. So this way, not only am I moving ahead with the change and supporting it, I've got a lot of people writing procedures and policies with me instead of having it just done myself. And from a support perspective, there's a lot more people to turn to in the event that there's a question, concern, a glitch somewhere, or whatever, right? So that's what I heard through your experience as well. Is just the ability to just scale yourself in that process.
Yeah. And I mean, as you're talking about that, it's making me think about we understand the impact, the cost, the potential risk of it. We put these policies in place called management of change policies and management of change procedures and management of change checklists, right? So we see the value in it. Somebody's seen the value along the way of doing that exercise. And here we are, we're really talking about it and how we got to like demonstrate the value of change management. And like part of that whole process prescribes, who those stakeholders who they are and who should be involved. At least at Technica, we have, who should be involved in that meeting or who should be participating here. And like key aspects that we need to go, investigate and look at. And oftentimes we're like, oh, well, it's only when we're changing equipment. No, it applies to processes. It applies to different, apps or different programs that we have on the computers and the systems and the setups. And it's usually a lot of the same things. What training is required? Is any new training, needed? And then we just go through the whole process. But I do find it interesting that here we were sitting talking about, we see the value, we live it every day. And yet we're often finding like, oh man, that's going to be work going to put that change management plan together. But we all know that ultimately pays off, right? There's value there for sure.
It does. It does. And it is a surreal moment where you're like, hey, you know what we're going through right now? We're actually asking our clients to do this, right? So welcome, welcome to that headache, right? And I think one of the tools that I would probably want to touch on as well is, outside of making sure you have the right stakeholders and making sure that you create that program, that change management program, if you will. I never really realized how underutilized and undertrained we are as human beings in flow charting. Taking the simple task of saying, I'm going to do this, and because I do that, this will happen, and then from there, it's going to go there, and then from there, like just through that creative process of mapping out all of your steps, because a lot of people are like, hey, I know all the steps. Write them down. It's like writer's block. As soon as you say, write down your steps, it's like they forgot all of the steps all together, right? So having that one tool that seems to be a pretty mundane task of just flow charting what that chain looks like really adds a lot of value to the process, because you can kind of stop your whole project just on that single exercise before even hitting the goal on anything, because of a whole point somewhere, right? So like even as something as simple as an indoor show policy, right? We're shifting to an indoor shoe policy. There's no technology involved here. However, wait, what if people don't show up and they don't have shoes? Or what if they show up and they don't have shoes? Oh, well, now we need to go get shoes. Oh, wait, now we need every size. So now you can't even flip on the policy until you have all of these things in place. And if you wouldn't have thought about that whole process end to end from a flowchart perspective, you would have turned that on and then you would have had potential injuries from sliding all over the place with your socks or not having socks at all, or all this stuff, right? So to your point, it's not just a technology thing, it's an everything thing. Right on. So based on that, Eric, any closing remarks on stakeholder management? Because I think we've shed the
No,
light on
I
a couple
mean,
of things.
I think it is something that is very important. I think to all the project management training through the PMI or the PMP, you think about some of our ISO processes that we've subscribed to for quality control, quality management. Change management tends to be one of the biggest components. Why? Because there's value in anticipating and taking advantage of or preparing against some of the bad things. So great episode, Gus. Thanks for bringing up that topic, and hope others got value out of it.
For sure. And if anybody out there has seen different things or have comments or just want to chime in on what we shared, because I'm sure there's a lot of different experiences out there, please go ahead and put your details in the comments or just send us a direct message, and we'd love to hear from you. So yeah, so until next time, thank you for following. And again, ring that bell, hit the like button, send those comments. We want to see you guys interacting and engaging with the content so that we can learn from you as well. And yeah, and if you've got a topic that you want us to cover, go ahead and shoot us that topic as well. And we'll see you next time.